Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Dr. Craig Engstrom, but you can just call me Craig. I am the director of the Center for Teaching Excellence here at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And this is the third video in a three-part series. You don't have to have been or attended the previous ones, though those ones did cover things like basics of learning objectives, how to design really effective ones, using best practices, how to do reverse designing, how to use Bloom's and Fink's taxonomies, for example. Then some demonstration of how to deploy that in D2L. Then we moved on to the second session, which covered more material related to learning objectives, more focused on the course level with best practices around those and some demonstration of D2L. In this third one, we really want to spend time focusing on more of the programmatic uses of learning outcomes and how you can use D2L to facilitate this. For that reason, I will start with a screen share on my end just to kind of contextualize it into the SIU experience. This might help generate questions you have for Paul later on if time allows. Of course, we can always spend time with Paul at another date because he is part of our D2L enablement subscription. Basically, this is a subscription we have with D2L that gives us access to an instructional design team at D2L and their expertise. They help us with course reviews. They help us with program and course development activities, and they obviously do some workshops when requested. So if this is also something that sounds interesting to you for your program, reach out to me. There's sometimes opportunities for us to assign time with Paul, specifically for your unit. Before we get too far along, I do want to mention that on Wednesday, we do have another event. This is with a company called Akindi. And this is for exploration of a Scantron replacement software. I will put a link here in a minute into the chat. So do consider joining us for that one. I do believe it is at noon, but you can click the link and verify that. It could be a useful tool for doing other types of assessment, not just examinations, because you're allowed to or can pre-print the material and actually place it into books. And it uses a QR code to identify students in their classes. So just as an example, we're thinking of using it in Univ 101 for like midterm check-ins, or even just doing assessments on student, where they're at, what they're thinking, what challenges they have, and just turning it into kind of a survey. With that said, let's go ahead and get to today's session. Like I said, I will start off with sharing my screen just so I can contextualize for you a little bit about this. And I'll just have Paul introduce himself. Normally I've been doing that, but for sake of moving on. So the first thing I want to do is show you, actually, let's start with this page here. This is actually the University 101 Master Shell. And in it, what we're doing, and this might be familiar to some of you, especially if you're teaching core curriculum classes, there's a whole host of assessments already created by the the core curriculum team. And you can actually add those into D2L and use them. Where we place them, and this might be the practice that you use them, is actually in the grade book. So let's go to course tools and check out grades here. And what we've done essentially is to create a column that is not visible to students. And then we ask instructors to fill out the assessment using the rubric that is established in there. So then what we can do on the back end is just pull that data across all of the courses and give us assessment criteria. And do put in the chat if for some reason you can't see the screen. I think you should be able to. Okay, so from that, and I just wanted to really give you kind of a higher level idea of what we can do in the CTE. And I've said this in all of the sessions: garbage in, garbage out. So here's just an example of one dashboard we have created, and it is with the Univ 101. Just to give you an example, we're using it, for example, to get absences. So if you create a standardized absence group in D2L, this is not really assessment, as you can see, but if you want to know, are students attending all of my CMST 101 courses, or all of my English 101 courses? If you standardize the grade or the attendance register, on the back end, we can actually pull all of that data in, okay? The next thing is we can also look at another way of doing it as a pivot table so that we can monitor absences across weeks and see if there's any patterns forming, and then we use these for intervention strategies. Another thing we can do, for example, is look at gradebook items across the course. So this is one way we know if instructors are not actually doing what they need to be doing in the class. we can say, hey, we're not seeing any gradebook items. What's going on in your course? But obviously then we can see breakdowns of how well they did. We can then take this data and use it with Navigate, for example. So we can pull assessment data out of Navigate. An example of this would be, what are their identity markers? Are they first generation? Are they a student that is underrepresented? All those kinds of things. And then we can actually do correlations to see what are the outcomes for specific groups across all of the courses. Another thing we can do is look at if they visited well, we're testing this right now. Did they go to the tutoring center? And if they did that have an increase in their grade, for example, in an English class? So this is just some of the things that we're doing. You can create all kinds of different dashboards. Here's some demographic ones, all grades, and so on and so forth. Okay. The reason I wanted to start off with that is because whatever Paul will be showing you is only as good as you create a standardized way of assessing across all of your courses or in your program. If, for example, one person changes the title even of the gradebook item or changes the absence title for that particular week, it'll basically generate extra stuff in our, when we pull the data. It just creates a whole nother column and makes it hard for us then to give useful information. Another thing that we're finding is that we'll create a lot of the things that you'll see today for faculty or departments, and then no faculty actually do the work. And then about 4 years later, someone's saying, hey, we're going to have our midpoint review. Can you send us the data? And we're like, there's nothing to send, right? So again, it's only as good as the uses that it has. So I just wanted to give you some of that overview to show you kind of like what we can actually deliver for you in terms of dashboards or data, which really I think puts into context why it's important what Paul is teaching us today, so that we can actually give you what you need on the back end. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go ahead and let Paul take over from here. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'll try to monitor that and ask Paul those questions as we move along. Thank you so much. Paul, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for that introduction, Craig. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me see if I can do that. It says host disabled from sharing screen. Do you mind if you
give me 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
For sure. Sorry about that.
Oh,
there you go.
All right, it's sharing screen, so I hope all of you can see it. Let me do the presentation view. Let me see if this works. Okay. You can still see my screen, Craig? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll just do a brief introduction. So my name is Paul Hila. I work for D2L in the Learning and Creative Services. I've been with D2L for more than 2 years now. I do have a background in English literature and visual studies, a master's in teaching. And like I said, I've been working in the e-learning industry as a content developer and instructional designer for over 3 years now. So, and yeah, I just want to say thank you for joining. This is the agenda for today. So I'm going to show you how to create, how to set up an achievement scale for the standard tool and the competency tool, which I'll do a quick recap in a short while. Next item is I'm going to show you how to assess a learning outcome at the course level, and then how to track your learning outcomes across the course, and how to communicate the progress to your students using intelligent agents. Hopefully we'll have some time for a Q&A in the end, but feel free to post your questions in the chat. I can't see the chat myself when I'm sharing my screen. So Craig, if you could please let me know if there's a question in there that we can address, that would be great. And let's get started. So first thing I want to get into is just a brief recap of the tools that are available in Brightspace for you to create, import, associate, and assess your learning outcomes, competencies, or standards, however, whichever name you're using in your course. So there's two tools. There's the competencies tool and the standards tool. The Competencies tool is the older legacy tool, and the Standards tool is the newer tool that's available. They pretty much serve the same purpose. There's some minor differences, which I'll get into one of them. But just something to note right off the bat, that you can only use one of these tools in your course. So if you start using the competency tool, if you create a learning outcome, a competency, a learning outcome using the competency tool, you'll notice that the standards tool will disappear. And vice versa, if you start with the standards tool first, your competencies tool will disappear. So you can only use one, but you can use one in one course, the other in another course. That's allowed. But so this is something that I went over in our first session, and I don't know how many of you were present in the first session, but what I want to focus on today for this session is this item here. So how to set up an achievement scale. So using the standards tool, you can set up an achievement scale at the organization level. And if you're using the competencies tool, you can set up an achievement scale at the course level and at the assignment level. So I'm going to start off with that. So just showing you how to set up an achievement scale using these tools. So I just want to set it up first. Let's assume that you have created, you have learning outcomes in the course. You've either created them using one of these tools, or you've imported them, or a mix and match. And you've associated those tools with an assignment, using an assignment tool or a quiz or a discussion. Now we want to know, well, how do we know if a student has has met the learning goal or not? So this is where the achievement scale comes into play. So I've added 2 additional steps here. I'm going to focus on step 1, so setting up the achievement scale at the org and course level, and step number 4, which is assessing that standard. Once the standard has been associated, you've set up the achievement scale, then you can go into the assignment and assess that assignment, and also assess the learning goals that are in there. So let me show you that first. All right, so I have 2 courses here. These are both sandbox courses. One course I'll show you under course admin. I have the competencies tool is enabled. Like I said, the standards tool is not here because I'm using the competencies, and in the other course, I'm using the standards tool. So I can go to course admin, look under assessments, I see my standards tool here. So let's start with the standards tool. So let's say I have a learning outcome or several learning outcomes associated with an assignment in your course. So, well, actually, let me backtrack a little. So from here, I'm going to go to the cog here at the top next to your profile. Let's select admin tools, and then under organization related, you will see the standard tool near the end there. So I'm going to select the standard tool. Okay, so this will open up, and this will show up this screen. You have 2 tabs at the top here. One is the achievement scale tab, and the other is the programs tag. So from the programs tab, I can create a program, and in that program, I can create competencies for that program. So I have several here. I have a test 1 here. So I've got a competency, and then I've got some sub competencies under that. So, but what I want to show you is, so once I have a program with competencies or learning outcomes or standards, whichever term you're using, then you want to make sure that you also have an achievement scale set up. So here I have a few achievement scales that have been set up. This is my test 1. So I'm going to go there. And this is fairly easy. So you give your scale a name, and then you can determine the number of levels. So when you go in to assess that assignment, and when you want to decide whether a student has achieved a learning outcome or not, you can set up several levels. So for this sample one, I have two levels. One is got it, the learning outcome has been achieved. The next one, the other one is not yet, it has not been achieved. How do I know that? I mapped the levels to a percentage score. So if a student has, let's say, achieved 70% on an assignment, then they have achieved that learning outcome that's been associated with that assignment. If it's below 70, that means not yet. So they have not achieved that learning outcome. So when you're associating learning outcomes to an assignment, there's actually two ways you can do that. You can attach that learning outcome to the overall assignment, which would mean that if a student achieves 70% on the overall assignment, they've met the standard. Or you can do both. You can associate a learning outcome at the rubric criteria level. So in that case, if a student has achieved more than 70% on that criteria level, then they would pass that standard that's been associated with that particular criteria level. So I'm going to save and close. That's really it for setting up an achievement scale within the standards tool. I just want to note here that I have a few standard achievement scales here. This is the default, so you can change which achievement scale you want to set as the default. So right now it's this scale is set as the default. I think this is more or less the same scale that I just showed you. So this means that all the courses under this program that are pulling from these learning outcomes will use this scale when you go into those individual assessments to determine whether a student has met that learning outcome or not. And so this is how you set it up using the standards tool. Now I'm just going to show you how to set up that achievement scale using the competencies tool. So with the competencies tool, like I said, you don't do it at the program level, you do it at the course assignment level. So I'm just going to jump into an assignment here, this good copy essay assignment, and I'm going to go ahead and edit this assignment. We are here, setting up achievement skills using competencies. I'm just trying to keep up with the slideshow as well. Okay. So from here, this is a little bit different from the standards tool. So when you go to edit an assignment under evaluation and feedback category, on the right-hand side here, you will notice there is an area where you can attach a rubric, add a rubric, and then you will see learning objectives. I've attached one learning objective. I'm going to go in and select manage learning objectives. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this for now, just so I can show you the process. It's fairly simple. I'm going to remove that. Let's assume I have no learning objective associated. I want to associate learning objectives to this assignment. Okay, so this is, I select associate learning objectives. This is going to pull the learning objectives that I have that are in the competencies tool. So I have two learning objectives under competency 1. I'm going to select both. So both of these learning objectives will be assessed through this assignment. I'm going to add selected. I see both of these learning objectives here. Okay, learning objective 1, I can see some, so this is under competency 1, learning objective 1. It's being assessed using the good copy essay. I guess you can also see, so children, this means all the activities / assessments that have been associated with this learning objective. So I'm adding it to the good copy essay, but you can see that the same objective has also been associated to two different quizzes here. So you can associate a learning objective with more than one assessment. Okay, so now we've associated it, but we still need to add an assessment method. So just like we set up an achievement scale for the standards tool, we want to know, well, how do we know, when a student has met that learning objective or not? So I'm going to select add a standard. So with the competency tool, setting an achievement scale or a threshold percentage, you need to add a rubric because it's attached to the rubric. So you first need to select a rubric that you've created in that course for this assignment. So I'm going to just select a sample rubric. I'm going to select save. So the rubric is there. Now it gives me, it says criteria. So do I want to assess this learning outcomes against the overall rubric score or against a specific criteria? So the competency tool allows me to do this as well. I can assess that through the overall rubric score or a specific criteria. I'm going to go with overall rubric score for this one. And then the activity is required to complete the learning objective. Is the activity required to complete this learning objective? If it is, you select that, and then you select a level threshold. So if a student in the overall grade, if they achieve a level 4, let's say, that's my threshold. If they achieve a level 4 or higher, they've satisfied that standard, that learning objective. If they achieve a level 4 or lower, they have not. So that's my threshold. I'm going to save, and I've associated, and I've added a rubric, and I have a level, a threshold level for that learning outcome for this rubric. Now I still have another learning outcome here. I can do the same. I first need to attach, just ensure that you're using the same rubric. Again, do you want to attach that learning objective to the overall score or a criteria within that rubric? I'm going to go with overall score. And then we're going to set the same threshold level. This is, I would say, important that we're consistent when you decide what the threshold level is for meeting that standard or not. So let's say level 4 for both. Saved. And that's that. So I've associated these two learning objectives to this good copy essay assignment. And I also have, I've got the rubrics in there. It's the same rubric, and I have the threshold level in there. So that's step 1.
Paul,
Now,
can I just take a minute here to maybe make sure that I understand it, but also if I'm understanding it, it might help some other folks.
Sure.
So let's imagine you're a program and you need to assess, and I'm just going to use my own department, communication studies, right? And I need to assess whether or not students are capable of achieving one of our oral competencies. And one of the oral competencies might be oral citation. That could be a criterion in there, and there might be other criterion. And then there's the overall one, which would be for the oral competency that we have established as a department. This could be imported into all the courses across the curriculum, and then an instructor can assign, based on the assignment they're given, that particular rubric if the assignment makes sense to be assessing for oral assessment. Is that accurate, Paul?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
should I just jump in with a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay, so on the part where you were just at a minute ago, where you choose all criterion or you can pick one, is it sort of like an all or one situation, or can you pick 2 of them? You know what I mean? In the criterion, it looked like you could only pick a criterion, or you could pick all of them when you're doing the learning objective assessment part.
Yeah, using the competency tool.
Yeah.
Right. So in that case, yeah, you can, let me go back to that. So your question is, are the option to pick the overall rubric grade or a specific criteria?
Can I pick more than one criterion is what I was trying to get at.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me go back.
Yeah, because it seems like we could design our grading rubrics and assign them to different, like if we have two different learning objectives, we could have two different assignments and two different rubrics if we can only pick one criterion. Like it seems like the example that you gave, you chose all for both objectives, so it seems like it's not really getting specific to the actual like possible standard or the objective that the students are learning. So I was trying to figure out like, okay, just in my mind, how does this play out in the grading process?
Yeah. So to answer your question, it appears that, yeah, you can only associate it to one criteria. But this is using the competencies tool. The standards tool, you can associate more than one at the criteria level. And I can, yeah, if that's something, I can show you that as well, if that's something you want to see.
And Sarah, I would say, I mean, maybe not, Paul, so we can continue on, but this would be a good example of if your unit is really seriously trying to determine how should we, based on the way we want to set things up, how should we go about it? That could be some one-on-one time with Paul to kind of figure out what makes the most sense. And then he would communicate that back to us so that, you know, an ID here could help you kind of get that rolling so that we avoid the garbage in, garbage out scenario. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me 1 second. I'm just gonna, because I went out of my sandbox. I just want to go back. Let me see here. Okay, I'm back. Let me see if this is the right course with the standards. Perfect. Okay, so we have learning outcomes in the course. We've associated them to an assessment. We also we know what the achievement scale is when we go in to assess those learning outcomes. So now I'm just going to show you how to, well, what does it look like when you go in to grade an assignment and assess those learning outcomes. So like I said, when you go in to assess an assignment, you will see the standards that have been associated with that assignment under the overall feedback box. So I'm going to go there now. And I'm going to select the same assignment. Now, so I have a list of users here. These are not students. They're colleagues, but so there's no submissions here, but I'm just going to select one just to show you. So in your course, you will see a submission here. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So I have a rubric here. And Sarah, just to show you, using the standards tool, I can associate learning outcomes to the overall assignment or individual criteria. So here, you can see for criteria 1, I have this standard. And for criteria 2, I have this standard. And then I can also go and edit these and add more or remove if need be. So I can see here that I have 3, let's say, learning outcomes associated to one to criteria 1, 1 to criteria 2, 1 to criteria 3. And if I go all the way to the end, under the overall feedback box, I see all of the learning outcomes / competencies that have been associated. The first 3 are aligned with the criteria 1, 2, and 3, and the second, the last 2, these have been associated to the overall assignment. So now I want to determine whether a student has met. Let me just make this bigger. These competencies / learning outcomes. I know that my threshold I showed you was 70%. So I go up if a student has a level 4 or a level 5, that means they've achieved the criteria. So that means I'm going to select got it. If it's under level 4, that would be under, well, let's say under level 3, If it's below 70%, not yet. So it's as simple as that. Just just a note to make sure that you're not mixed up and that you're keeping up with where that learning outcome has been associated. Because if it's at the criteria level, you want to make sure that you're grading it appropriately. So if they get a level 2 in that criteria, but let's say they get a level 4 in the overall assignment, they still have not yet met this learning outcome, but they met the learning outcomes, the 2 learning outcomes that have been associated to the overall assignment.
Paul, why isn't that automated? I guess, like if I were to say select, they have a 2 out of 5, it would just automatically trigger not yet in that screen.
You mean when I go in and give them a level here?
Yeah, so let's say, yeah, if they're supposed to get a 70% or higher, and maybe it's because you're not assessing right now on an actual grade item. I'm just thinking, like in the rubrics tool in the gradebook, for example, if you associate the rubric to the gradebook, if I were to select, say, I can set up points, right? I could be, if they get a 3 out of 5, this is worth, 10 points on the assignment or something. So it automates the grading as well as automates the rubric itself. And I guess what I'm saying is, if like criterion 1, they're not matching it, why do I have to cognitively remember to select not yet? Why isn't it doing that for me? I guess is the better way to put that.
That's a good question, and I don't know if I have an answer to that question right now. Maybe it depends on the view that I'm looking at. I'm not in an instructor view, or there is no submission. There could be a few factors. I do know that for assignments that where you have to manually go in and grade the assignment, I think you have to also manually assess the learning outcome. I know that with quizzes, it's automated. So I'll make a note of that and see if I can find an answer if this can also be automated for assignments.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be great to know.
Okay, let me see. So the next slide is associating standards with rubrics. So I went over this. I can actually, let me see. So I kind of covered this, but when associating standards with assignments, there's 2 options. So you're associating at the overall level and at the criteria level. Craig, would it be helpful if I just quickly walk through that, or do you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to my rubrics tool here. This rubric is locked. I'm just going to pick just a template rubric here. Right, so it's fairly easy. So for this rubric, you can see I have a standard that's been attached to criteria 1. I can remove that, or I can add. So Sarah, to your question, you can attach as many learning outcomes to a criteria using the standards tool as you want. So I'm going to go for these first 3 and align standards. So those 3 are aligned to criteria 1. And then you could do the same for criteria 2, criteria 3, etc. That's for the rubric. For the assignment, to attach a learning outcome to the assignment itself, you would have to navigate to the assignment. Edit the assignment, and then from there, again, it's fairly easy. Once you have your learning outcomes in the course, you would I have 2 associated. You select this browse standards, sort of like a plus symbol here, and then your standards in the course will pop up, and then you could just select whichever ones you want to attach to the overall assignment.
Paul, maybe this will be a good moment to remind people here, like this was covered. Again, I'll send links to the earlier videos that covered this in a little bit more detail. But I know everyone that's here is probably at different places. Like one place to start is do you have good learning outcomes established for your program? Do you have faculty buy-in to actually use these tools in D2L? If the answer to yes are these, then you're ready to move on to actually implementation of building your D2L to do that for you. And that's where the CTE can really help you out and working on. So, you know, I know everybody's probably at different places, but most critical for most programs, at least in my experience in the CTE, is going to be having the buy-in to actually utilize these tools. So I just wanted to say that. And we're always happy to keep doing more workshops and send you the right information to actually show you how to do this when you're at that place. Okay, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. So like I said, for the quizzes, so if you're associating learning outcomes to your quiz, the quizzes are auto-graded. So it will automatically, depending on that achievement scale again. So if a student receives 70% or higher in the quiz, then they will have met those standards, and if not, then they will have not. But so those are determined automatically when you're using the quiz tool. One thing to note here is that if you do plan to associate standards with the quiz, make sure that at the achievement scale, a percentage has been set up, because that is an option, like I showed you before. So you want to check that and set a specific percentage scale for that achievement at the program level, so that the quiz can determine whether the student has met the standards or not. And another thing to note is that the quiz must be configured to allow attempts to be automatically graded upon completion. You can set this option on the assessment tab of the quiz. Okay, so more or less, we sort of know a little bit about how to set up the achievement scale, what it looks like when we've associated those standards to an assignment or a quiz in the course. So the next step is I want to get into a little bit. You want to track progress, learner progress, and see how they're doing in the course, whether they're meeting these standards or not. So this is the progress tool is a good tool to do that. So I'm going to navigate there. Okay, so when you navigate to the class progress tool and select standard, so I have a test student here. I can, in your course, you will see all of your students. This is the dashboard. What appears at this level is content completed, logins, grades, assignments, but you can change this by going to settings. So if you want to change what you first see at the class level, you can go to settings. So these are the trackables that I see first. I can just replace this with something else, with another trackable. But just to show you, class progress does track. I'm going to go into the student. It tracks a number of activities, as you can see. Let me just make this bigger. The summary just gives you a sense of all of those trackables, but it does track grades, standards, content, discussions, assignments, quizzes, checklists, surveys, course access, login history, and so on. So for today, I'm going to go into standards. And then here, I will see all of this, not all of the standards that are in the course, but all of the standards that have been associated with an assignment. So, and you can see which standards have been assessed, which have not. So the red means not yet. That's per achievement scale that we set up, and the blue means that that standard has been met. So this student has not yet met the standard. I want to look a little deeper there. I want to see what that standard was associated with. when it was assessed. So it was assessed in April. It was not met. I want to see how it was assessed. So it was associated to the good copy essay. Well, no, I don't want to go there. Well, yeah, if I want to see, if I want to get a look at the rubric, I could select and I can see that the rest of the learning outcomes within that assessment. But just from the progress tool, again, if you're under evidence of assessment, if you're associating that standard to more than one assessments, and you will see those associations under here. Just at this time, this learning outcome has only been associated to this one assignment, and the student has not met that. I can go back, I can check another learning outcome that's been met. Again, it shows me all of the assessments that outcome has been associated with. And for the good copy essay, this outcome has been met. You can, like I said, you can attach more the same learning outcome to more than one assessment. If that's the case, you will see that. So if in the first assignment, the learning outcome was not met, you will see in the second one, maybe the learning outcome was met. You will see that trend here as well. Yeah, so moving on into quizzes. If a quiz has multiple attempts, you can see the number of attempts and whether the student has met the standard threshold or not, just like with assignments. So in this example, I hope you can see this image here, but the student did not meet, make it a little bigger here. So in this example, the student did not meet the standard threshold in the first attempt. So quiz attempt 1, not yet, but they met it in the second attempt. They scored higher. They met that standard, and you can see that progress using this tool. And this one I covered at the beginning. You can get an aggregate sense of where your class is percentage-wise, using 4 trackables that you've decided are the visible trackables in that dashboard view. And you can replace these with other trackables as well, if you want to. So at this point, let's say one of your students is not doing well. They're not meeting the standards, and you want to reach out to that student. So with Brightspace, we have a tool that's called Intelligent Agents. So with Intelligent Agents, you can automate your communication to students. You can use Intelligent Agents for a variety of reasons. Basically, the Intelligent Agents are attached to a release condition, and then they scan Brightspace, and once it's been determined that a release condition, once the release condition criteria has been met, then that email to the student will be deployed. So I'm going to actually show you that in my sandbox. Make this bigger. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to, you could access your Intelligent Agents straight from the class progress, but I've created, so I'll do that. Doesn't really matter, but from your class progress, if it's easier, you have a link here, use agents to automate feedback. So let's say a student is not meeting the standard, you want to create a you want to send them an automated email. You can do this at the beginning of the course when you're designing the course. It doesn't have to be done at the point where a student is in trouble. So you want to set up your intelligent agents when you're designing the course. Select intelligent agents. These are the intelligent agents set up for this course. This is assessment feedback, assignment reminder. These are the ones that, in case missed assignment. So these are the ones that I've set up, and I'm going to show you. So that's the what for intelligent agents. A little bit about the why. So why do we use intelligent agents? Increases learner motivation while decreasing their sense of isolation. Okay, these are some use cases. Prompt learners who have not logged into the course system. Let me just go to new agent so I can show you this at the same time. So a student has been inactive for a number of days. You want to send an automated email to that student to remind them that they should log in and get started with coursework. So you have these two use cases here. Take action on activity, either login or course activity. So whether they haven't logged into the course or they've logged into the course, but they really haven't looked at the content. They haven't started going through the content of the course. With an intelligent agent, you set up the name, category. So actually, let me set up this case scenario here, and then I can go into an example of setting up an intelligent agent. So just a use case scenario, Professor Greta teaches an online American history course. She wants to ensure that students are notified a day before an assignment is due. Professor Greta decides to use an intelligent agent that is triggered when a student has not submitted an assignment X to the folder. This helps students be punctual and saves them from losing marks for late submissions. Okay. And I'm going to show you the how. So I'm going to walk through this. Agent name, I'm just going to copy and paste. I've done this before. So a description, the agent name is assignment reminder. Description, I want to, so that I know what this intelligent agent is about, deploys when a student has not submitted an assignment 1 day before the submission deadline. I can categorize my intelligent agents into categories. For this one, an assignment reminder. And of course, I can create more than one intelligent agent under this category with different release conditions. You can set up your intelligent agents and not have them enabled, so they don't deploy. So you can create more than one and then choose which one you want to deploy. When you're certain that you have a use case for an intelligent agent, you select agent is enabled. With agents, you set the frequency. So do you want the agent to run one time only, hourly, daily, frequently, weekly, monthly, annually? For this case, I want students to receive an assignment reminder 1 day before the assignment is due. So I'm going to set one time run. And the date, this would depend on when the due date for that assignment has been set. So I want to make sure that I'm setting the agent up to deploy 1 day before the assignment is due. Okay, so I have that down. Then I can go into the criteria tab here. So rolling class list, I want all users visible in the class list to receive this email, or if you have specific cases for different learners, you can select users with specific roles. But for this example, I want all of my learners in the class list to receive this email. In this case, I don't have a use for login activity or course activity. This agent is about assessment reminders. So I'm going to go to release conditions. And then under release conditions, you have different options to set up release conditions. So this one has to do with assignment reminders. So under assignments, submission to folder, receive feedback on submission, score an associated rubric, no submission to folder. So no submission to folder. And then condition details, and then here I determine which submission folder. I'm going to go with good copy essay. So they haven't submitted an assignment 1 day before the assignment is due in this submission folder. I'm going to create the release conditions. I have a choice here if I have more than, I can add more than one condition to one AI, and I will have the option, do I want the AI to deploy once all of the conditions have been met or any one of the conditions have been met? So in this case, I only have one release condition. So I'm going to go with all. Then I'm going to scroll down to actions, take action only the first time the agent's criteria are satisfied for a user. I'm going to select this one because it's a one-time run. And then the purpose is to send an email. So I don't want to change user enrollment based on this release condition, but I do want to deploy an email. So if a student has not submitted that essay a day before, I want to just send them a reminder. So here I would select all my class list. So your class list, you would just select all because you want this to apply to all of your students. I'm just gonna search for a test student. Test student, add recipient. So now it will send to this test student. Let's see, I have to subject is assessment reminder. So I'm using replacement strings here, as you can see. If you want to get a sense of how and when you can use replacement strings are used if you want to personalize communication with students. So you would use these brackets here with, for example, in this case, I want, when the student receives that email, I want them to see their first name. So I would just copy initial user first name for this test student here. I can do it there, or I can do it at the message, maybe not there. That's sorry. That's the address, but I can do that at when I write a message here. I'm going to go, so dear initiating username, so they'll see the student will see their name. This email is a reminder that you have not submitted your good copy essay. So here you can write that message to the student. You can also include a link to that submission folder. You want to make sure that you're reminding them that they will lose grades if they don't submit it on time, and so on and so forth. And then if they have any questions, to reach out to the instructor. And then I can save and close. And that's that. So that intelligent agent has been set up. It has been deployed. If you're working on an intelligent agent, you're not sure about the release conditions yet, I would again recommend that you just leave this unchecked. Agent is enabled, so you can go back and sort of finalize those details, and then when it's ready to deploy, you can enable the agent. Well, Craig, I mean, we're
We're at time. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think it was important to cover what we did, and we can always set up another session at another time. So, yeah, thank you again so much for your time on all of these sessions. You've done a fantastic job. I'm going to put these together into a playlist and then send them out to everyone. Have them available for people in your programs if you're wanting to really kind of motivate other faculty members to utilize some of these tools you saw. Kind of tell them about it, show them. Part of the purpose of this is just to get you thinking about the options available to you, so then we can give you more bespoke help when you need it. I think sometimes people just don't even know what is the capabilities, and they're sort of designing without those in mind. So part of this series was just to kind of get people around that. I know we couldn't cover everything, but we have plenty more time with Paul over the next year. So we'll try to get more sessions going. I will say for me, just a couple reminders on those intelligent agents, send them out for positive things too. And you can use them as a way to, if you want to manually run, but not actually email students, just to see like, how many students didn't submit something, it can just actually run in the background. We do have videos on that. We've done a series of intelligent agents workshops this past year, and I plan many more next year. So any questions you might have, just email them to me and then I'll get them to Paul and we can answer them as part of our email out to you. I thank you all for your time. I know it's a busy time of the year. And Paul, is there anything else you would like to say this last minute?
No, thanks for joining. Sorry we didn't get a chance we didn't have enough time for that Q&A, but like Craig said, send him the questions and then he'll send them to me and I can respond to any questions that you may have related to what was covered in this session or previous sessions. I'd be happy to respond to your questions. So sorry for that we didn't have time in the end there.
Oh, it's okay. Slow is better sometimes. So, okay. Thank you all again. Have a good rest of the day and good luck with your finals.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.